Ever wondered who's actually pulling the strings when you check your grades online, book a train ticket, or log into your bank account? Well, there's an entire digital city operating right behind your screen. And today, we're going to meet the people who actually live and work in it. Let's dive right into today's explainer and discover the hidden ecosystem of a database by meeting the distinct characters who keep the whole thing running.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll meet the database users. Then, we'll look at the database administrator, or DBA. Third, the application programmers. Fourth, the everyday end users. Fifth, we'll look at a real-world school database. And finally, number 6, a quick review and exam prep.
All right, Section 1, meet the database users, entering the ecosystem.
So before we meet our specific cast of characters, we really need to establish what it means to step foot into this digital city. Basically, a database user is literally anyone who accesses, uses, manages, or maintains a database according to their assigned roles and responsibilities. The big takeaway here is that a database user isn't just one type of person. Just like in a real, physical city, you've got the mayor, the construction workers, and the everyday citizens walking the streets. They all interact with the database in vastly different ways depending on their specific job. That brings us to Section 2, the Database Administrator, or DBA, the mayor of the data city.
Let's start right at the top of the food chain with the all-powerful figure who runs the entire show. When you think of a DBA, you need to think of the ultimate authority. The DBA is the overall manager responsible for managing, controlling, maintaining, and securing the entire database system. Their primary job? Absolute control and protection of the data ecosystem. Think of it like this. If the database is a massive bank vault, the DBA is the one holding the master keys, deciding who gets in, and making absolutely sure the vault itself is structurally sound.
So, what does this ultimate authority look like on a daily basis? Well, it translates into 6 main tasks. First up, database creation. They define the structure and actually build new databases. Second, maintenance, keeping performance up and applying necessary updates. Third is security management, so creating your user accounts, assigning passwords, and protecting data from unauthorized access. Fourth, backup and recovery, taking regular backups so data isn't lost if, say, the system crashes. Fifth, performance monitoring, solving problems when the system gets a little sluggish. And finally, data integrity, ensuring the data remains accurate and totally consistent. To put it simply, they build the house, they lock the doors to keep out intruders, and they make sure the whole place doesn't burn down by taking regular backups.
Moving on to Section 3, application programmers, the architects.
Now, the DBA is busy managing the vault, so they definitely aren't building these specific, everyday tools that you and I use. That is where application programmers come in. These are the developers who write the actual application programs and software that help users interact with the data. They are the creative builders bridging the gap between a raw, complex database and the rest of the world. So, these are the folks coding the banking apps on your phone, the hospital management software, or the school grading systems. They act as the architects building user-friendly doors into our complex data building. Because of this, the responsibilities look very different compared to the DBA. Programmers develop database applications, write code using various programming languages, connect those applications securely to the database, and maintain that application software over time. Notice what isn't on that list. Right. Their day-to-day doesn't involve managing the core database infrastructure itself. They aren't the ones doing the database backups. Instead, they write the crucial code and create the interfaces that allow everyday people to actually interact with the database safely and easily.
Section 4, the everyday end users, the citizens.
And who exactly are those everyday people using the programmer software? Well, now we've arrived at the largest group in our ecosystem by far. End users are the people who use database applications to perform their daily work without managing the database directly. Whether it's a teacher entering grades, a railway booking clerk selling you a ticket, a hospital receptionist checking in a patient, or a library staff member checking out a book, these users simply rely on the programmer's software to get their jobs done. They don't know, and honestly don't need to know, how the database actually works behind the scenes.
This brilliantly illustrates just how hands-off they are from the technical side of things. Just look at their daily activities. They search records, enter new information, update existing data, generate reports, and print records. That's literally it. They just search, update, and print, entirely unaware of the complex DBA maintenance or the application programmer's code operating in the background.
To really cement this in your memory, let's contrast these two roles directly. On one side, the DBA manages the database, creates the accounts, maintains security, and takes the backups.
On the other side, in stark contrast, the end user merely uses the database, accesses records, performs daily operations, and explicitly cannot manage database settings. The DBA holds all the keys and security, while the end user is strictly limited to their daily tasks. And when we contrast the DBA with the application programmer, we see another super clear boundary. The DBA is entirely focused on the infrastructure, managing, securing, backing up, and controlling. The programmer, however, is entirely focused on the software, developing apps, writing code, creating interfaces, and using the database within those apps. It's basically the difference between the person who manages the city's power grid and the person who builds the appliances that you plug into it.
Section 5. The Real-World School Database, bringing it all together.
All right, let's take all three of these abstract characters and place them into a real-world environment you know incredibly well. This breakdown is going to be your ultimate aha moment, for sure. It perfectly maps out the entire ecosystem. At your school, the DBA is the IT professional who creates the central database, manages the servers, and performs backups so your grades aren't lost in a random power outage. The programmer? That's the software company developer who actually built the school management application your school bought. Then we have our end users, who actually fall into a few different categories here. The teacher uses the software to update marks and attendance. The office staff uses it to manage admissions and fees. And you, the student, log in as an end user to view your examination results. See? Everyone is accessing the exact same database, but their roles dictate entirely different experiences.
Section 6. Quick review and exam prep. Pop quiz time.
Let's lock in everything we've covered today. We're going to look at exactly how this ecosystem will be tested on your upcoming board exams based on the textbook. If you take away just one thing from this explainer, remember these three distinct pillars of the database world. The big three database users are the database administrator, the application programmer, and the end user. The manager, the builder, and the citizen.
So, let's look at the 1-mark expected questions. Pause for a second and ask yourself, can you clearly state a single-sentence definition for each of these? Remember, it's pretty simple. The DBA manages and secures, the programmer develops the interactive software, and the end user performs daily tasks using that software.
Stepping up to the 2- and 3-mark expected questions. For these midweight questions, just visualize our comparison slides. If you're asked for 4 responsibilities of a DBA, think database creation, security management, backup and recovery, and performance monitoring. When asked how they differ from an end user, just contrast the DBA's heavy focus on security and control with the end user's simple daily tasks, like searching and printing records. And finally, the big one. If you get this massive 5-mark question asking you to explain the different types of database users with suitable examples, you've got a secret weapon. Just write out the school database table we reviewed. Define the 3 main users, and then use the school example, showing the DBA backing up the system, the programmer building the app, and the teacher entering the grades. Do that and you will perfectly demonstrate your understanding of the entire ecosystem and easily secure full marks. So now you know exactly who uses the database and what their distinct roles are. But it makes you wonder, how is the actual physical architecture of this digital city built? How is the data structured so that the DBA, the programmer, and the end user can all interact with it simultaneously without everything just collapsing? Well, that is exactly what we will explore in our next explainer, where we dive into data models, database architecture, and schema. How deep does the data rabbit hole really go? You'll have to join us next time to find out. Thanks for learning with me today.